In September of 1996, I got word that my dad was dying of cancer in Minnesota. And shortly after that, within a few days or a week, my dad came to Arizona to visit, and we talked. We talked about a lot of things, but we didn't talk about everything. We didn't talk about everything that needed to be said. And now he was running out of time. So he stayed there for a few days, and he went back to Minnesota. And shortly thereafter, I got word that my dad was not doing well there in Minnesota. So my brother and I, we got in a car and we drove through the night all the way to Minnesota, all the way through. And I wasn't thinking about anything but just getting there, thinking about my dad dying. A lot of silence. My brother and I talked, but there was a lot of silence, and there was an urgency to get there. What I didn't know was that by the time I got there, that my dad was going to be so heavily medicated on morphine that, really the conversations that we needed to have didn't happen. And so, in this video, I'll talk a little bit about that, what happened in the hospital, in the room that he was in at that time, the last hours with my dad that I spent with him, and what I heard him trying to say, but he couldn't because he was so drugged up on morphine. And, kind of what I've done with that whole experience there in the room with him as he was dying of cancer. And by the time I got there, like I said, he was heavily drugged up on morphine. All my other siblings were there. We were just kind of around him, hanging out. And then, the medication bothered me. The fact that he was so heavily medicated. The fact that, he wasn't coherent. He couldn't talk. So we all just sat there for a while. And then later, shortly after being there with my dad, myself, my brother, some other siblings of mine, my rest of my family wanted to go and get something to eat or go out. I think maybe go back home to one of my siblings' places, because I had some siblings that lived there in Minnesota at the time. So one of us had to stay back, and I offered to do that. I felt something inside me that I needed to do that. I don't know what it was, but there was, I don't know if you'd call it intuition, whatever it might be, but I decided, I chose to stay with my dad. Maybe it was an ominous feeling, I'm not sure, but everybody left, and I stayed there with him as he was dying. And maybe they thought he was going to be okay, be around for another day or two, but something in my gut told me that he wasn't going to be around that much longer. And I sat with him, and I remember holding my dad's hand. He was bloated, he was jaundiced, his feet were swollen, I remember those images, I remember the doctors telling me that, he had a really strong heart, he had a really strong heart, despite him, in the condition that he was in his, as he was dying. Yeah. So he kind of started to have a lot of, I guess labored breathing, I knew something was up. And then he tried to start talking and saying things. The problem was he was so drugged up on the morphine that I couldn't understand him. And it was really hard, and it was very frustrating, and it was painful, because he was trying so very hard to try to communicate something to me that I didn't know what it was, and that was heartbreaking to me. It was very hard to take at the time. Anybody who's been in that situation, and many have, knows what I'm talking about. He was desperately trying to say something to me. I'm not sure what it was. I'll never know. what it was he was trying to say to me at that time. I'll never know. And that was heartbreaking to me. Like I said, it was very hard to not know what my dad was trying to tell me in his last breaths of his life, you know, his last few breaths. Yeah. All I could do at that time was to think about doing something for him, because he was trying to do something for me. He was trying to tell me something, give me something, say something. So all I could think about was doing something for him. And my dad liked to sing a lot, and he was a big Elvis fan, you know, and stuff. And so I just thought of a song of Elvis's, and that Elvis sang. Other people sang it, and it was a song. It was called "My Way." So I just started singing to my dad. I started singing "My Way," you know. And he kind of went silent, you know. He tried to say something as I started to sing, but he kind of went silent. And it was almost like he just kind of got it. He understood. He knew that I knew, you know, something. I'm not sure what I knew. I just knew that my dad needed something to give him some kind of peace, you know, there, something that he liked, something he enjoyed as he was dying. So I sang and I sang and I sang my way, you know. Yeah. And shortly thereafter, my dad died. And I sure do miss him. His eyes were open when he died, so later my brother came in and closed his eyes. I didn't tell him what had gone on between my dad and I when nobody was there, when it was just, you know, my dad and I. And I've kind of carried the weight of that, you know, what happened in that room for a long time with me, not knowing what my dad was trying to tell me. I thought maybe it was something that, you know, a conversation that we should have had before when he was in Arizona, or maybe even years before that. I'll never know, like I said, but it wasn't through willpower or time that brought me peace, you know, through all of that. It wasn't anything. It you know, it bothered me for a long time, but it wasn't any of those things. It wasn't the passage of time, like I said, willpower. I found my peace in that situation through faith, through faith in Christ Jesus. He's the only one that gave me peace through that comforted me, that loved me, that assured me that everything was okay. Everything was just fine. And that was, you know, the peace that Christ gave me was the only thing that helped. That's what I can tell you. Peace through Christ. That's what brought me peace with that, and with so many other things in the past, prior to that, going way back. It was Christ, you know, my faith. So I can tell you that, you know, if you still have time, if you know, with your mom, your dad, your brother, your sister, anyone, your aunts, uncles, cousins, whoever it is, don't wait for the right moment. You know, your moment is now. Your moment is now. The time is now. I kind of learned that in that hospital room in Minnesota in September of 1996. And, you know, you don't have to learn it the way that I did. Never knowing what your dad is trying to tell you as he's dying. So go out there. The time is now. Yeah, do that while you still have time. So this is it's an ongoing series. I really appreciate you watching. If you haven't seen the series, I'll put the playlist up here. As always, I'm so thankful and blessed for you tuning in and kind of watching this story that started when I was 16 in a car living in Alaska, in Wasilla, Alaska there. So like I said, you can watch that whole series leading up to this video up here, and like, subscribe, put any comments down there below if you're dealing with a similar situation or if you've gone through anything like I've gone through, and you just want to share some of your own stories and thoughts. I'd really like to hear about it. So take care, God bless, and we'll see you real soon.